CO2. CO2.
System in place so that our agriculture system doesn't suffer because of climate changes which are happening. And lastly, the impact on the biodiversity. We saw a lot of people posted it that biodiversity has suddenly become very powerful. We are seeing something which we had never seen in our life. But will it last, and should it last the way we are looking at it? So biodiversity change is something which will actually drive the whole climate change dialogue, whether we talk about diseases, whether we talk about water, whether we talk about agriculture, whether we talk about air quality. So all of these actually tell us one thing, which is clear in my mind, and I think this is also clear to many of us, that we need to bring in different disciplines to address this issue. This is not the domain of one single discipline to say something and then it should be done. We have also realized that we need to also get people who are expert in different fields and also people who are from social sciences who can bring in the context of what we are talking about today. Because whatever science comes needs to be finally applied in society, and if society is not prepared, chances are that we will not be able to deal with it very effectively. So I welcome all of you again and all the panelists who come from different background, and I'm glad that this effort has been very ably handled by Dr. Sonali Khanna. So welcome, Dr. Sonali, and now I will leave it to you to conduct the rest of the session. And before that, would want to hear from you and then other panelists. So you can unmute yourself and start. Thank you.
Good evening to all the listeners. And I'm indeed grateful to Dr. Rakesh Kumar, Director NEERI, for organizing today's program and his observations about the challenges of environmental health in 2020 and 2021. As we all know, mankind has suffered on all counts in 2020. Human loss of life has been unprecedented, and so have been the evil consequences for the environment and the economy. But as Sir said, let's start on a positive note, and I want to bring your attention to the significant achievements of ours in the last 70 years. So if we see, we have an increase in life expectancy at birth from 32 years in 1950-51 to almost 68 years in 2015. The WHO declared India polio-free in March 2014 and free of maternal and neonatal tetanus in August 2015. Infant mortality rate came down from 139 in 1976 to 37 per thousand live births in 2015. So it shows that we are capable of achieving results if sufficient funds are made available. So in this pandemic, the doctors and paramedical professionals also came out in flying colors. The citizenry in all countries are expecting experts to put their heads together to find practical and cost-effective methods to ensure widespread vaccination, quick recovery of the sick, and renewed vigor to the implementation of conservation measures. So fortunately, the tide seems to be turning with the invention of COVID vaccines and the United States of America joining the Paris Climate Change Accord. The climate change, human health, and environmental conservation have emerged today as the main concerns of the 21st century. And so now a time has come to redefine our relationship with flora and fauna. The international community is also looking forward to a period of renewed activity in curbing air and water pollution. And in India, the death toll in the pandemic was rather limited because of the success of Swachh Bharat campaign, which not only created awareness about hygiene, but also cleaned up public places. The state government and economists are mesmerized by statistics of physical growth because they are visible. But we need to create awareness that economic growth is not sustainable without good health of all living beings. Similarly, funds which are earmarked for compensatory afforestation and corporate social responsibility needs to be utilized effectively and speedily for environment conservation and rural public health infrastructure. Cheaper bank loans should be made available to strengthen private sector facilities in semi-urban and rural areas, which is the need of the hour. I'd like to draw your attention that the budget presented on the 1st of February makes a provision of rupees 50,000 crores for setting up a national research foundation to encourage research activities. I particularly welcome the increase in the health sector budget by 137%. India also needs non-political, non-profitable advocacy groups like Population Foundation of India to mobilize public support not only for family welfare programs but also for environmental health issues such as plastic use. So in 2021, epidemiological assessment and readiness to tackle health burden arising due to change in climatic conditions and environmental conditions need to be strengthened. So in 2010, when we started research in terms of environmental health, and some of it is published in the International Journal of Environmental Science and Development, we emphasize that the public health infrastructure needs to be boosted to the rapidly changing disease profile. And now today we see that there is a rise in the chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, allergic disorders, as also water and vector-borne diseases. So concerted efforts need to be made to facilitate a harmonious balance to enable sustainable development and optimum overall health, and they go hand in hand. So it's my pleasant duty today to introduce our distinguished panelists who come from a very variety of fields. Professor Priya Abraham is there with us. She's an eminent scientist who's heading the Indian Council of Medical Research, National Institute of Virology, Pune. Her interest in clinical virology is well acclaimed, and Madam belongs to the category of scientists who believe in science for the masses. I also welcome Shri Sanjay Kumar ji. He is presently Director General of Forests and Special Secretary to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and is handling the forest and wildlife sector at the national level. He has also served as the Global Executive Director of the Climate Parliament. We have with us today Dr. Parvez Hayat, presently Ombudsman for the State Bank of India. He is a doctorate in disaster management, and he has a vast experience in execution of community programs and work in the social sector, particularly for the elderly. So we all here are eagerly waiting to hear the views of our distinguished panelists and benefit from their knowledge and experience. I now request Professor Priya Abraham to please give her address.
Good evening, everyone. I'm indeed delighted and honored to be part of this panel. Of course, being in an institute, a big laboratory, I can't really say I have impacted much on the environment, except being conscious about how we segregate our biomedical waste that we are very conscious of. But I will just outline some of, over this past 1 year, how we've been able to steer the country towards coping with this pandemic. So as you know, we were the first institute to announce to the nation that we did have a case of SARS-CoV-2 that came in from Wuhan. And with the announcement of the first 3 cases, began our intense activity towards developing good diagnostic tests to expand the testing over the length and breadth of our country. So we initially, in beginning February, we trained about 13 laboratories. Today, there are about 2,350 laboratories that are able to do RT-PCR for this assay. Many of them, at least the first 107 and several government laboratories, were assisted by us by giving them the testing protocol, providing them reagents, and hand-holding them as they built up their capacity. Today, when we look back, we have sent out about 57 lakhs worth of tests to different parts of the country, equipping laboratories to be able to do RT-PCR. Our ability to identify the virus went on to being able to look at the genome of the entire virus, publish the first genome sequences, whole genome sequences of these viruses in the international public database. Then our next big achievement was when we actually succeeded in being able to propagate this virus in vitro in our laboratory. The significance of that was, one, that we were able to generate a lot more virus, make viral antigen, and it became extremely important in helping with the making of India's first indigenous vaccine. Making the virus or propagating the virus allowed us to also make an indigenous antibody testing ELISA, the Kavach ELISA, and this technology was transferred to 7 different companies by floating an expression of interest. So, all the sero surveys that you have heard of, many of them were done using this ELISA technology. We also were able to interrogate at least about 100 odd candidate chemicals or drugs which people were looking for antiviral properties against this virus. We could bring out that about 21 odd candidates had some antiviral activity. We also interrogated some equipment, ozone generating equipment, negative ion generating equipment, to look at the capacity of this equipment to reduce the burden of SARS-CoV-2 in a closed environment. We also, like was mentioned earlier by Director Neeri, that we were able to look at sewage water samples from Mumbai, and we were able to demonstrate, yes, that the virus was there in sewage water. We also looked up the presence of the virus in family situations, like how long could family members who got infected be shedding the virus in fecal matter, because that would invariably find its way into sewage water. And in terms of taking care of our own staff, it was very important to constantly be testing them. So, every fortnight people were tested for the virus. We conducted at least 2 rounds of sero surveys to know how many people were exposed. And I'm happy to say that most of the infection that we saw within our own staff was what was not transmitted within the institute, but unfortunately came in because they had to travel during the time of the lockdown, sometimes having to take restricted public transport, but still get infected, or from the localities they came from. Now, having had the power to propagate the virus, the next big achievement was to engage with pharma to work towards a vaccine. And we successfully have done that with BBIL, Bharat Biotech International Limited, in making India's first all-indigenous vaccine, Covaxin, which is an inactivated whole virion vaccine. I'm sure you've all heard of it. It's now being provided to different regions of the country. That was the first vaccine we engaged with. We also engaged with Zydus Cadila, with Serum Institute of India, and we will be engaging with at least 2 other pharma companies in the continued efforts towards providing more and more vaccines, not just to our country, but also, as you know, to the rest of the world, not just our neighboring countries, but you will be hearing shortly that the virus is going to cross many shores to get to other nations. This has been a journey of resolve, determination, synergy with other institutes. We also contributed in terms of validating several RT-PCR kits, antibody assays, especially helped indigenous assays, so that India's testing capacity increased exponentially. So this journey has been, I would say, yes, an incredible journey, but a journey where we have discovered that as a nation, we, with our innovativeness, we could be pretty much self-reliant. So with that, let me close, and thank you for inviting me on this program.
Thank you so much, madam. That was really informative and a good summary of the journey from the virus to the vaccine. And you've really done a commendable amount of work. And I'm sure we're all looking ahead. But as just for everybody at large who's listening, what is the future perspective in terms of the variants now? With the, what should we look ahead for, say, 2021 and the times to come ahead in terms of this disease?
So right now, ICMR NIV, along with several other government institutes, other institutes that have a capacity to look at large number of genomes, so it is a surveillance, a genomic surveillance that is happening of especially travelers who are coming from certain countries, interrogating these samples to see whether we have variants that are significantly different. We also looked at people who were vaccinated, and were those vaccinated individuals' serum samples able to neutralize these variant viruses. So we looked at the UK virus. We hope to be looking at other variants too. So our job is going to be to join hands with other major institutes in continuing this genome surveillance. And like I had mentioned, yes, we'll have many more people coming for, many more pharma coming forward with candidate vaccines, monoclonal antibodies, candidate medications that we will continue to plod on for the coming 1 year at least.
Thank you so much, madam, for sparing this time despite your multifarious administrative responsibilities and really apprising us today. Thank you so much. I now request Shri Sanjay Kumar ji, please address us. And we'll be grateful if you can broach on, say, the climate change perspective and the environmental conservation and the biodiversity, which we're looking forward to hearing from you.
I guess he has a call, he's attending a call. So you have to wait for a minute.
Rakesh sir, can we have some update on what CSIR NIRI is now doing in terms of after the testing and anything in the perspective now? Okay, we have him back.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Sorry, sir.
These are the little dangers of being in the chair here. Okay, so thank you so much, Sonali, for inviting me here, and thank you, Dr. Rakesh, for organizing this beautiful webinar. In fact, what you and Dr. Rakesh have said already, what I was going to speak, okay? In fact, when I heard from you that you are mentioning compensatory afforestation, I was so happy. That is such a word which is typically reserved to foresters. How is it being uttered and repeated by a doctor? Yeah, but I'm also very, very happy to be in the company of Dr. Priya Abraham. In fact, just being with her reminded me of my olden days when way back in 1982, I started my first round of research that was on radiation genetics. And when I was presenting my findings at the International Congress of Genetics in January 1984, I was told that this is it, because we didn't have any DNA isolation or sequencing lab or research establishment then in India. So seeing that now India has progressed so well that now we are producing completely indigenous vaccine, thousands of genomes of this COVID are being tested. I'm really happy on behalf of all the Indian citizens, and have profuse thanks to the National Institute of Virology and its director. Thank you, Dr. Abraham. Coming back to the topic which you have given to me about climate change and environmental health, we all know that our environment is a very important contributor to human health. And any disturbance in the parameters of environment proportionately affects health of not only the health of the ecosystem, but all the constituents of the ecosystem, of which we are also one. And because we live in a very narrow band of environmental parameters, so naturally any change in the environmental parameters would affect human beings in a more profound manner than any other creature, than any other organism, which might have more resilience than us. Everything is interdependent. And if climate change, which is definitely a reality now, and because of climate change, the most manifest effect, which is the temperature rise and associated effects of temperature rise because of that, that also is going to affect our health in a very, very profound manner. We are going to have, Europe has seen, for example, very recently, that how so many people have been dying because of heat strokes during the summer season. This is unprecedented, basically. And the sequence of such heat stroke deaths is very apparent, that the elderly die and then first, and thereafter the younger ones, they are affected. So if we have to be on the safer side of the environment, then it is necessary that the targets which we have set at the Paris Climate Convention be respected. And we are very happy that US has backed at this convention once again. And they are now respecting, they have started respecting the agreement which was made in 2015 in Paris. And we hope that with the joining US back to this convention, our goal of arresting the increase in temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial era will become a reality. In fact, India is setting a number of standards in that direction. And what we call now the nationally determined contributions, NDC targets, we are well in the position to overachieve that. We have promised that we will be reducing our GDP intensity, the carbon intensity of GDP, by a certain percentage by 2030. Similarly, we have promised at Paris that we will be adding more carbon sinks with forest and tree, additional forest and tree cover. All these targets, we are very confident that we will be able to achieve. And by that, we are going to set an example to the rest of the world that they should be also coming forward and pushing their targets beyond what they have promised through their nationally determined contribution at the Paris Convention. And with that, we are hopeful now that let's see if this the increase in temperature of 1.5 degrees Celsius becomes a reality or not. So that said, coming back to the main question here, which everybody is grappling today, after the onset of this COVID pandemic, that how actually climate change or other environmental parameters are affecting the zoonotic diseases, what we call the zoonotic diseases. Those which are coming from the wild, either through vectors which are originally from in the wild and coming to the human societies and all that. So with that also, what we are seeing that climate change is going to have a very profound effect on that. And there are very clear evidences with regard to that. I was just reading a book on this, And a very interesting thing has been found, and that book was actually comparing the total number of cattle in New Zealand versus total number of cattle in the UK. And what are the incidences of zoonotic diseases in these two countries? So very interestingly, per capita cattle, per person cattle, per human person cattle in New Zealand is 6 times more in the UK, than the UK. In New Zealand, it's 6 times more. And the prevalence of zoonotic diseases is also 6 times more. So it's a very interesting fit between the animals and the human health. And going beyond that, when we are adding climate parameters to that, very clear evidences are there. For example, I'm told that a viral disease called Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, CCHF, that disease, which is a viral disease, actually, has attained a pandemic proportion in Turkey and Kosovo, just because the winters were warm there. The winters were not as cold. So what happened that the vectors which were there, which were harboring in the wild during the extreme cold winters, just because of the climate change, because of warm winters, they came out and the pandemic could take place. And similarly, the vector of this disease, which is an arthropod, the sandflies, they are proliferating. And with that, the incidence of this particular disease has also increased manyfold. So what is happening actually, that not only because of climate change, many vectors are finding a more suitable congenial environment for a population outburst. And that is also causing the total virus, I will not say virus load, but the total virus population also to multiply accordingly. And that virus population, that vector population, when it is coming in contact with humans, the prevalence of any viral disease becoming a pandemic is becoming more and more real. So coming to the summary of this is that not only it is essential that climate change needs to be mitigated, but also that the biodiversity, the ecosystems need to be preserved in their original form. And there must be more efforts on conservation so that the vectors which are in the wild, they do remain in wild. Their habitat is not disturbed to such an extent that they come out of the wild, come out in contact with the human population, and also that the mutations, etc., which could take place in these viruses because of climate change, or other vectors becoming other species becoming vectors of these viruses, those things should not happen. So this is very important that we take now conservation much more seriously, and I'm very happy to tell everybody that our government is very, very aware of this. And if you could have seen the budget of this year, you could have seen that more than 2,200 crore rupees has been allocated for Clean Air, the National Clean Air Program, in continuation of a similar program which has started a few years back, and about 4,400 crore rupees was allocated last year. So in addition to the Clean Air Program, you could see that there is a major impetus on infrastructure development. And this infrastructure is actually, they are all going to be environmental friendly. So the total environmental load which was there because of our old infrastructure is going to reduce because of this new infrastructure. When we are building new railways, we are ensuring that the capacity of the new railways is such that the environmental load becomes lesser, per capita environmental load becomes lesser. So in fact, what is going to happen that we will be not only pushing higher accelerated rate of economic growth, which again is one of the main causes because of which such type of diseases at endlessly on this topic. But let me stop here because I'm seeing that my friend Parvez is longing to go.
Thank you so much, sir, for this insight and saying it in such simple terms for all of us to understand and putting it in a nutshell. And we have some questions for you. And the people want to know essentially that, as you just said, is it possible to meet the target for India in terms of reducing the carbon footprint, considering our economic priorities and the population at large? That's a difficult one.
Definitely, yes. We have said that we will be reducing our carbon intensity by 25 to 30% by 2030. And we are definitely going to achieve that. We have very promising targets, but at the same time, our actions are also very strong in that direction. In fact, we could very confidently say that in many fields, we will be exceeding our targets.
Yeah, I think that's really possible, sir. Now, especially when we're looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, I think they're way more manageable to work around as compared to when we started with the Millennium Development Goals.
Sure.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to you.
I will just like to everybody to know and to be happy about it is that India is one of the few countries in the world which has demonstrated a consistent increase in its forest and tree cover over the last 2 decades, consistently. And that's one of the achievements which very few countries in the world have. And this is despite the fact that we hold the largest population of cattle in the world, one of the largest populations of humans in the world. So the pressure on land and natural resources per capita is very high. It's more intense than any other country in the world. And despite that, we have been able to achieve such targets. It's marvelous. And it's all because people like you and people like everybody, all the Indians, the thanks actually go to every citizen of this country who has contributed in their own manners in contributing to the national goals.
Thank you so much, sir. I now request Dr. Parvez Hayat to, maybe give us an overview of the way this pandemic has been handled in terms of being a biological disaster. So that's how we're looking at it now. And also the administrative strategies. So considering from lockdown to now vaccination, we have a lot of enforcement of administrative control which is required, and we want you to brush up upon that as well, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sonali. And I'm very thankful to Dr. Rakesh and also Madam Abraham, Mr. Sanjay Kumar, my batchmate and colleague, for giving an insight. So a lot of things have been talked about. The climate change has spoken about the zoonotic disease and rising up seas. So as we all know that it's an accepted fact that most of the disasters are also linked to the climate change. And over a period of time, even the intergovernmental panel on the climate change has also shown that, our surface temperature has been rising over hundreds of years with some regional variations. I mean, also the increase has been detected in the precipitation of, also globally. So the thermal expansion of sea water and the meltwater from the land-based ice that led to the sea level rise. And also the anthropogenic, this is also a fact, they have also concluded the anthropogenic global warming that has been influencing the climate change, and the climate change, the triggers. Oh, not able to hear me? Excuse me?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Oh, I thought I am not audible. She's saying something. Not audible to you, Sonali?
Audible, sir.
Okay. So, not going into the detail, how the rising storm surges over a period of time, and regarding the viruses, also we know that for ages, for a million years, they have been in existence in the environment, or maybe the coping capacities of our ancestors. So there is also a concern, and there is a research. There is a need of research as to see how our forefathers, million years, they've been able to cope with these climate changes and also the viruses. Is there anything wrong in our lifestyle or anything wrong in our food habits? So these are also the issues to be talked about. So definitely the climate change leads to the disaster, and disasters also leads to the climate change, and also it also leads to the health hazard. So I'm not going into those aspects. I wanted to speak what Sonali has said, to speak to me on the management of the COVID. So definitely if you see in the past also the Spanish flu. So all these most 75% of these diseases are the zoonotic diseases. These are RNA protein. So RNA viruses, they have been in existence. So Spanish flu also lasted for more than in 1918 to 1920. That time also, all these precautions like social distancing and masks, etc., they have been taken. But in the present pandemic, we analyze as in a disaster management that what is the global scenario, how globally this has been fought about, how the most, the country like Italy, Spain and all countries, Italy is known to have a very strong, robust medical infrastructure, but still they failed miserably, and their medical systems got overwhelmed, and they faced a lot of problem, and the UK and USA. So what has been, I'll just give a picture. How come these are the very, very advanced countries with a lot of logistic facilities, with technology and all, still they did not perform. But there, at the same time, the certain countries in Europe like Czech Republic and also the Slovakia, and certain other countries in Southeast Asia, for example, Taiwan and Hong Kong, Singapore, and other side, you see the Israel and Vietnam. You'll be surprised that Vietnam, the cases are very, very few. And I do not know, well, till recently, I came to know that there was no death. Maybe some cases may be there. So how I would like to analyze where exactly there has been a variation and failure in tackling and managing these biological disasters. So like, I feel that there is a research by Johns Hopkins University on they did some research between the high mass wearing countries and the low mass wearing countries. Which are the high mass? So the high mass wearing countries did much better than the low mass countries. Low mass wearing countries like USA, and this was many reasons, but this is one of the reasons I'm talking about. The USA, the Brazil, and the like the Italy and the Spain, UK, where Russia, whereas the low mass wearing countries, whereas the high mass wearing countries like Czech Republic in Europe, they did very well, and the Slovakia, they led a movement called "You Protect Me and I Protect You." House to house, the ladies, they were stitching this mask, wearing the mask. Beside the social distancing, they were wearing the mask. Likewise, in Taiwan, everybody followed, beside the, closing your, airport to the outside countries, social distancing and all, but very important factor which I have noticed by going through the many feed, that high mask wearing countries such as Taiwan, Vietnam, where these incidents have been very few and several hundred, and to my best of my knowledge, there was no death reported at least a fortnight back in such countries. How Taiwan has done so well, and how Israel, two things, being a cop. The Israel also implemented the heavy penalty for not wearing the mask. Likewise, in Taiwan and Singapore, if somebody is not wearing a mask, that time only it was a very heavy penalty, So they enforced the lockdown literally very seriously. So these are the reasons where, like in India, of course, we instituted the lockdown very slow. I will just tell you the example on the 22nd February, I guess, when the lockdown was being announced, and sadly, when the people visited our country, Indian country, and somebody is landed from Iran and went to receive somebody at the airport. So I was maintaining a distance. Okay, I'm receiving you. And the gentleman waited for 4 or 5 hours. There is a flight which went to Bangalore. When I checked up the next morning, I was told that nobody contacted him for a week or so. So the contact tracing, like we in India initially, now over a period of time we improved. So in contact tracing and testing, and also the the enforcing the lockdown, literally wearing the mask. Here India also initially wearing the mask, there was no penalty, and even of late also, although the penalty has been informed. So those countries who were literally for like even in Germany, in the Europe, relatively did better than the other European countries, because they were testing very high. They were testing both symptomatic and asymptomatic people. That was one reason that they did better than Italy, where Italy is much better equipped. And the two countries, European, I talked about the Czech Republic and all, they did well, and very few cases were there because they followed the social distancing and the mask wearing. So mask wearing, I find that those countries have done very well, where the social distancing, enforcement of lockdown, and contact tracing. Germany was very good in contact tracing. So relatively vis-a-vis Italy and Spain and UK, that Germany was doing, testing very high. Of course, like country like ours, it is just not possible to even test the. Initially, we are testing low for a period of time, because, as Madam has said, that so we gradually the Indian government also increased the medical infrastructure after announcing the lockdown, and also the very strict lockdown. Just globally in the public discourse, when you talk about any kinds of disaster, the foreign author, the US author, they don't accept the role of police. But you will notice that in India, the police was as one of the first responder, along with the paramedics, doctors and paramedical staffs, and the police. They were the first responders, first time. Like we talk about the specialist forces in other disasters like cyclone and tsunami, etc. But here, even in the enforcing the lockdown, even in the contact tracing, because nobody knew how the contact tracing is done here. But later on, the India, increased the testing also, because the testing low, and we cannot afford. It will take years if we test in India, go for the testing the asymptomatic and symptomatic both. It was not possible, and of course we were not as quick as China, which they made. They completely cut off Wuhan, from the rest of their country. They were smart enough. They did not allow, when they came to know about this disease, the Wuhan, not even a single man, individual, or car, taxi, flight, nothing moved out of Wuhan. They did move out of the country, but not to their cities. This is why the other cities of China was not affected. And we were little slacks initially. The lockdown, when we came to know that this disease spreads human to human. So so that was one aspect. And also the management, the contact tracing also, we were not doing well, but over a period of time it has increased. Initially, you might have noticed that in Kerala, they were very good in tertiary level. There are very good health facilities, even in the tertiary level. and they had dealt with the Nipah virus and all that. So they have the three-tier system and good, healthcare infrastructure. In Delhi, initially the things were very bad, and graduate because of the entire medical infrastructures were held. We were being contacted by many people how to get a bed. The many people, they were not able to bed, and it was like very, very tough time initially, and people did suffer because of the lack of adequate medical facility. I'm talking about in the Delhi and other metropolis, but in the smaller town, of course, these facilities were very less, and of course the virus had not spread so long. So I personally felt that the management of the wearing the mask, contact tracing, literally enforcing lockdown, like in India, we could not. We would have still done better had we instituted the lockdown little early, and also ensure that the contact tracing and wearing the mask. We could not implement it, although the government did announce. I mean, still some people, you go to the park, many people, they will not be wearing the mask, and very few cases are there where the police has literally. So this is why I wanted to say that certain countries like Vietnam, Taiwan, Singapore, Israel, they literally did the policing, the real policing, the disaster, this biological disaster, and they did well. But another reason I would like to give how those European countries, even if they were USA and all, the low mass rate, the median age. Why India is doing better? Because of we have been used to several type of viruses in the past, measles, polio, and so many diseases, malaria, etc. We have suffered. So our immunity has become relatively stronger. Immunity-wise, India is much stronger vis-a-vis those countries where you have a very clean water, and so they become vulnerable, And the median age of India is 29 years, and the median age of European countries, why they suffered, because that is 42 to 46 years. So large number of the people who are the very elderly population, and they are with the fragile immunity, they could not sustain, and they suffered. The comorbidity was another factor that is common everywhere. People in India also, people with comorbidity, they did suffer. But the management-wise, India has done. Now we are very strong because our immunity is strong. We are used to living in a with pollution, living with the pollution, living with so many diseases. So because of that, the immunity is in India is stronger than those countries. And also what I feel that this is a good lesson that how now the police and the paramedics, they have really done very well, and now we have also come up. The entire country, the infrastructure has come up, and India has been able to tackle this disease, this biological disaster very well. So this aspect I wanted to highlight, that how India vis-a-vis the other country is why the fatality rate is so low vis-a-vis the other countries, because our immunity is strong and our median age is also low, because we have the second largest youth population in the world. So I would like to stop here, and thank you very much. Any question, I'm there to answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. In fact, you've really summarized and also told us that yes, our population is an asset more than a liability, and especially the median age of the population. So the youth is an asset, and they're also the productive population. And but there's a question for you, which is we'll finish with your question first. So the viewers want to know that is the banking sector stressed due to COVID?
Banking sector stress
due to COVID.
Do you think that any sector is there any sector which has not been affected? And like you talk about real estate, like everywhere the system has affected, and a banking sector, of course, they had to bear the cost of whatever the government announced different schemes. it is the bank only they have to, disburse to the underprivileged people and the marginal section of people, giving loan and all. So definitely banking sector. But don't you think that way the all, either it is the real estate, because of the migration of the liberal, in banking sector did not face, but banking sector were hard pressed because they had to, the government did announce number of packages, and finally it was the pressure came on the banking sector. They have to, give loans to the SMEs and also to the people who are at the marginalized section of the society. If I take it so. I guess that there is a need for, like, if living with the viruses, we do not know how effective the vaccine is. Nobody knows whether how many months the vaccine, if you take a vaccine, and so nobody knows, because none of the vaccine has completed the third end. So there is a need to have lifestyle changes, redesigning the, either you call the SDG, redesigning the lifestyle, public spaces, open.
So
like
in fact, sir, we must appreciate that in this financial allocation by the Union Finance Minister, we have an Urban Swachh Bharat Mission 2, right? That is launched, and you have almost 1,41,000 crores for strengthening of the Swachhata campaign of Urban India for wastewater treatment only, and segregation of waste, reduction in single-use plastic, and also bioremediation of dump sites. So I think those measures are going to really pave the way for a lot of environmental conservation and strategies that will be evolved in public policy. Another question for Dr. Rakesh Kumar is that did the climatic conditions, environmental health improve during lockdown in India? So are you there? I think
Sonali, I couldn't hear you. Your voice was not coming through.
Okay. So, sir, the question for you is, did the climatic condition and the environmental health improve during lockdown in India?
Yeah, it was felt that it has improved, but that's a temporary measure that everyone is talking about, and that's not the solution as such. Right.
Temporary relief.
When we did this assessment of river water quality for Ganga water in many places, what we realized, the major difference was not coming because the sewage has reduced. Sewage quantity going inside was almost same, but the main thing which got cleaned out, appeared to be clean, is all the offering that we put in our rivers, all the flowers and all the puja material. So, and people are not bathing. So there's all solids which are going into the river that stopped, and that probably contributes almost like 20-30% of the overall load. So I think if we change our habits, 30% reduction in the pollution load of rivers can definitely be seen, and they will be much better than what they are normally. So we say that we are worshipping our water bodies, but we are actually harming water bodies all the time. The same thing we do for trees. On one side we worship, but the other side we don't care about them.
Well, that's a take-home message, sir. That should all make us think and go back to the basics. Yes, and I think that's really important from inculcating that and in children and the values in the youth as well, because that's what carries forward. And Professor Priya, are you there? There's a question for you. So the young researchers want to ask you, how long is the COVID virus and the mutants expected to infect the Indian population in the Indian perspective? If we have an answer for this.
Sorry, how long is the virus going to?
How long is the COVID virus and the mutants expected to infect the Indian population in the Indian perspective, considering all our local factors?
Well, that is really a difficult one to answer, because we are now, while there are some positive vibes about, high percentage of Delhi population has already got antibodies. Many sero surveys are showing that a good amount of exposure has already happened, and vaccination just started on Jan 16th. I think what is very important is that we have to get used to the new normal of continuing to wear masks, be very strict about hand hygiene, and also being cognizant that this physical distancing has to continue. We should avoid having crowded situations, especially indoors. So that really nobody knows. The vaccine was made in record time. What would have taken 10 years has taken 10 months or less. So we don't know how long the protection of vaccine is going to, whether we will need to have boosters after a year or longer. We don't know. We're so new into this pandemic in that sense, even though it has been going on for a year. So how long this will be a burden to the Indian population, given all the dynamics that you heard from all the prestigious speakers who have just spoken, is anybody's guess. But our contribution to this is to maintain the new normal, and also we have seen how the environment and especially our natural reservoirs actually sort of recovered while we were not polluting, actively polluting. So we know how our habitats, the earth itself can rejuvenate. So we should look to ways by which we can protect our environment. As I just heard, every time I see a tree getting cut down, it pains my heart. And let us be conscious of the plastic we get rid of. Try and go back to the use of, steel utensils, not through, thermocol plates and disposable plates and glasses. Our traditions are very good. We should go back to our traditions of using, utensils and cutlery and crockery, which we can wash and reuse, not keep throwing things into the environment.
Thank you so much. That's really another insight we got, which we really missed till now. And you're very right. It's been an absolute roller coaster from, say, February, from the first case detection in India from Wuhan to the the vaccination starting from 16 Jan. Yes, and we have a lot of gray areas and a lot of research and development to be done. So they're not very, departmental silos that we can stick around. It has to be more of interdisciplinary interaction, which will lead to more answers. And now some of the questions that are targeted at me, that is, well, the incidence and what diseases and what is more vulnerable. I'll answer this in a nutshell so that we have some time for another question. So, well, as we know, the incidence of this disease has had its share more in the people who have had comorbidities. In terms of the immunocompromised status of people who are old, who are already suffering from systemic diseases. So, say the ones who already have respiratory diseases or lung disorders, who have certain endocrine diseases like diabetes. India is like the diabetes capital of the world now. And we have newer diabetes forms like diabetes type 3 coming out. So we have all these, and ultimately, let's not forget that all these diseases are a part of gene-environment interactions. So there's a small, slight balance and a very thin, segregation of disease versus health. So that has to be looked at. Plus, we found a great correlation of a lot of patients who were either old, yes, and vulnerable, and those who were already suffering from certain diseases like asthma, chronic obstructive disease, and allergic disorders. And very much of an incidence was found, which is also documented now, is with obesity. So there is a lot, and that is one more reason why the virus has been playing more in the other nations much more than India. So that is something where we will be, there'll be a lot of onward research, and plus oncological diseases. So a lot of the virus has affected patients who already had cancer. So yes, there is an incidence of all that. And like our distinguished panelists mentioned, that it has to be a concerted effort of, say, the lifestyle change, nutrition, immunity building, adequate exercise. As Madam said, adequate sunlight, ventilation, these are all part of the Indian system. We must reinforce our hygiene habits and, living conditions the way we are used to it. And, consider factors like population density and all to play a lesser role by more of, strategy planning in terms of urban living spaces and semi-urban living spaces. So that's one more reason why patients with tuberculosis also showed more of this virus. So that's for this part of it. Now I hand over to Dr. Amit so that he can take it from here and summarize for us.
Yes, thank you, madam. So I thank all the panelists for their enlightening talks. And it's really a pleasure to have such a gathering of leaders from different sectors, because this COVID era was really a problem of not only a national but a global scale. And on a personal note, I won't be surprised if tomorrow or after some time there is a paper detecting these virus particles maybe in upper atmospheric layers, or maybe it has already been, I'm not aware of. So at such a problem, to tackle the problem of such a large scale, of course, different sectors have to come together and work together. So these deliberations by our panelists really put this message out that our different sectors really work together. There were, of course, some lapses, and we learn from it. And I suppose that people have really now become slightly environmental conscious as well as health conscious, because Indians are known to be like a little slow in these areas. So I suppose that we learn and we do really some lifestyle changes, which I think almost every speaker has brought about, that these lifestyle changes, we don't have to drop them now. We have to really take them together and inculcate in the next generation, so that there is a continued improvement in the climate change and environmental health that might have come in this era. So there were some good things, but there are some good lessons that we can learn and go ahead with this. And I, of course, thank all the viewers for listening to this, and I hope they have enjoyed this deliberation. And their questions, I hope we tried most of the questions to put to our panelists, and I hope that they got their answers. So thank you one and all. I really thank once again all the panelists. Really, really, very thank you for taking your time out and enlightening all the viewers about the COVID era and climate change and environmental health from the perspectives of different sectors. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.